My name is Naomi Carter. I'm 29 years old, and the night my boyfriend told me he could replace me in 24 hours, something inside me went quiet in a way I had never felt before. Not broken, not shattered, just quiet, like some final illusion had finally stopped begging to survive. It was a Wednesday night. I was standing at the sink, washing dishes under the yellow kitchen light, when Ryan said the cruelest thing he had ever said to me in our 3 years together. We were arguing about money. He had spent $1,200 on a designer bag for himself after months of promising we would save harder and be more serious about the future. We had plans, real ones, a better apartment eventually, a trip we kept postponing. The kind of life you build in small, unglamorous decisions before anyone else sees the result. I dried my hands and turned to him. "You said we were cutting back." "I said I was trying," he replied, rolling his eyes. "I didn't realize I was dating my accountant." "You're not dating your accountant, Ryan. You're dating the woman who keeps cleaning up after your impulses." He laughed under his breath, sharp, condescending. Then he straightened and slapped one palm lightly against the counter. "You know what, Naomi? I could replace you in 24 hours. Literally. There are women lined up waiting for me to be single. You should be grateful I even chose you." The room didn't explode. There was no dramatic storm outside, no glass breaking, no cinematic collapse. Just the faucet dripping. One drop. Then another. I stared at him. He really believed it. That was what landed hardest. Ryan wasn't saying it to wound me in the heat of the moment. He was saying it because somewhere inside himself, he had already decided it was true. Like I was a role. Like I was a placeholder. Like I should be grateful to occupy the space I did. I turned off the faucet completely, picked up the dish towel, dried my hands slowly. "Prove it," I said. His expression flickered. "What?" "You said 24 hours." My voice came out almost too calm. "Prove it." He gave me that smile I had once mistaken for charm and later learned was just vanity in good lighting. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "I'm being clear. We're done. Clock starts now." I looked at the microwave display. 7:23 p.m. For one brief second, confusion crossed his face, then amusement, then annoyance, then that smug little tilt of the mouth that used to make me question myself. "You're bluffing," he said. "You wouldn't leave me." I said nothing. He followed me to the bedroom while I pulled down my suitcase. "You can't even sleep without background noise." I folded sweaters. "You always forget your chargers." I stacked jeans. "You don't even know half the passwords for our subscriptions." I unplugged my laptop. "My mother likes me more than she likes you." That almost made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the sort of thing Ryan said when he needed to feel bigger than the room he was in. He leaned in the doorway while I packed, arms crossed, watching me with that infuriating mix of disbelief and performance. "Good luck finding someone who looks like me." I zipped one side of the suitcase shut. "Good luck finding someone who put up with you this long." I kept packing. "I'm the one who helped you get your confidence back after your last breakup." Still packing. Then he said, "Honestly, you're nothing without me." That was the only thing that made me pause. Not because it hurt, because it explained everything. The jokes that went one beat too long. The compliments that always came with conditions. The way every kindness from him eventually turned into debt. I looked up at him. There was no rage left in me by then. It had already burned off. There was just clarity. "You really believe that?" I said. He shrugged. "If the shoe fits." I finished packing in under an hour. 3 years reduced to 2 suitcases, a backpack, my work tote, and the sick realization of how little of my life in that apartment had ever actually felt safe. Ryan followed me from room to room at first, still talking, still trying to sound unbothered. Then, when it became obvious I was not stopping, he changed tactics. "Naomi, come on. You know I didn't mean it like that." I kept moving. "This is what you do. You twist everything." I picked up my toiletries bag. "You're really throwing us away over one fight?" I turned off the bedroom lamp. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, typed something, and smirked. That tiny, ugly smirk. I knew that look. He was already turning this into content, already rewriting the story before I had even closed the front door. I texted my friend Jerome with one hand while pulling my suitcase upright with the other. "Can I crash at your place tonight?" His answer came almost instantly. "Of course, send me your ETA." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt numb, because Jerome offering me a couch after one text felt more like love than anything I had received in my own relationship for months. I was heading for the door when my phone buzzed again. Adrian, Ryan's best friend. The beautiful one, according to him. The untouchable one, according to everyone else. The woman he liked mentioning in that careless, self-satisfied way some men use, when they want you to know they believe the world is full of options. Her message was short. I heard, "Are you okay?" Before I could answer, another one came. Don't go to Jerome's yet. Come to my place. We need to talk. Now. Adrienne and I had never been close. Not really. Friendly, yes. Civil. Warm when we were in the same room. She had introduced Ryan and me 3 years earlier at her birthday party. Over time, I had come to see her as careful, restrained, and far more decent than the circles Ryan liked to drag her into. There had been moments over the years when I caught something unreadable in her expression while Ryan was talking. A pause, a wince, a silence that felt loaded. At the time, I ignored it. That night, I didn't. I texted Jerome again. Change of plans. I may still need the couch later. Then I called a car. Ryan watched from the doorway as I dragged my suitcase out. You're seriously leaving? Yes. For where? I met his eyes. Somewhere I'm not being graded. His face tightened for 1 second. Then he laughed again. Naomi, by tomorrow night you'll realize how stupid this is. I pulled the door open. Maybe, I said, but by tomorrow night we'll also know whether you were telling the truth. I left before he could answer. Adrienne lived across the city in a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of quiet lobby that made your own footsteps sound expensive. By the time I arrived, it was a little after 9. She opened the door in gray sweats and an oversized white t-shirt. No heels, no perfect hair, no curated glamour. Just tired eyes and a face that looked like it had been carrying something heavy for too long. The second she saw my suitcases, something in her expression crumpled. Not dramatically, just enough to tell me this was not curiosity. This was guilt. Come in, she said quietly. Her apartment smelled like clean linen and expensive candles. Music played low in the background. I set my bags near the wall. Adrienne didn't waste time with tea or false comfort. She stood across from me, took one shallow breath, and said, Before I say anything else, I need you to know I should have told you the truth a long time ago. Something cold moved through me. What truth? She reached for her phone. Her hands were steady, but only barely. Then she unlocked it, scrolled, and turned the screen toward me. At first, all I saw were message bubbles. Then I saw dates. Long before tonight. Long before this fight. The first message on the screen was from Ryan. Naomi's getting too comfortable. Below it, another. Stable is cute, but I'm not marrying safe if I can level up. My fingers went cold. Adrienne looked at me like she hated herself for what she was about to confirm. There's more, she said. There was. Messages about a woman from Ryan's gym he was flirting with for attention and ego. Messages about keeping dating apps active just in case. Messages mocking the way I planned things, saved money, believed people when they said they loved me. One line made my chest go hollow. Her credit is perfect. Her life is organized. She's basically wife material until someone more exciting sticks. I lowered the phone slowly. The room went very still. How long have you known? I asked. Adrienne swallowed. Long enough to hate myself for it. I looked at her. Why didn't you tell me? Pain moved over her face so fast she couldn't hide it. I tried once, indirectly. Do you remember that dinner last fall, when I kept saying you deserve someone who made you feel safe? I remembered. Ryan had interrupted twice, changed the subject, called her dramatic. Adrienne kept going. He found out I'd been hinting. He told me if I said anything clearly, he'd tell people I'd forged client invoices in college and ruined someone's business. It wasn't true, Naomi, none of it, but he had fake screenshots, fake emails. He said he'd bury me if I interfered. I stared at her. Every second rearranged the last 3 years. Not entirely. That was the cruel part. There had been real moments, too. Movie nights. Inside jokes. Sunday mornings. His hand on my back in grocery stores. The way he used to kiss my forehead when I was half asleep. Betrayal is rarely made entirely of lies. Just enough truth to keep you standing inside it. Adrienne took one step closer, careful, respectful. I'm sorry, she said. You should have known. You should have had the choice of knowing. I nodded once, but I couldn't speak. She looked back at the phone, then at me. There's one more thing, she said. My chest tightened. What? Her voice softened. Tonight wasn't the beginning of this. It was just the first time he said the quiet part out loud. That line broke something. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just enough for the truth to finally get in. I sat on the edge of her couch because suddenly standing felt like a performance I no longer had the energy for. Outside her window, the city glittered like nothing had happened. Inside, my whole life had tilted. And somewhere across town, Ryan was probably still smiling, still posting, still convinced he had set a clock on my worth. He had no idea the countdown had started for him instead. I barely slept that night. Adrienne made up the guest room, left a glass of water on the bedside table, and told me I didn't have to talk again until morning if I didn't want to. Around 3, I padded barefoot into the kitchen and found her already there with 2 mugs. "Tea?" she asked softly. I nodded. For a minute, neither of us said anything. Then I asked how many people know. About the apps and the messages? No one for sure. A few people probably suspected. Ryan likes telling on himself, just not in complete sentences. I let out a humorless breath. That sounds right. She lifted her eyes to mine. "Naomi, I need you to understand something. He doesn't do this because you weren't enough." "I know people say that," I said. "It usually means the opposite." "No," she said steadily. "I mean it literally. Nothing is ever enough for someone who only knows how to love admiration." That stayed with me, not because it made me feel better, because it explained why loving him had always felt like pouring water into something with no bottom. By morning, my phone looked like a crime scene. Missed calls from Ryan. Texts from Ryan. Voice notes I didn't play. Messages from unknown numbers that were obviously him. One from his mother. One from a mutual friend who had clearly gotten his version of events first. And then there was social media. Ryan had posted a shirtless mirror selfie at 8:12 a.m. Fresh starts. Some people don't know what they had until it's gone. At 10:03 a.m., a coffee shop. At 11:17, the gym. At 1:42 p.m., 2 champagne glasses clinking at a rooftop bar. The other person cropped out. At 3:05 p.m., a mirror shot with a caption. "Funny how fast dead weight falls off." I looked away. "Do you want me to stop showing you?" Adrian asked. I thought about it. Then I shook my head. No. If he's going to perform this, I want to see how hard he has to work for it. So we watched. Not obsessively, just enough. Enough to see the rhythm of it. Enough to notice each post tried a little harder than the last. Enough to see the panic begin to leak through the polish. By late afternoon, the stories were sloppier, louder, more crowded. Ryan in a bar booth with people I didn't recognize. Ryan tagging locations he never actually stayed at. Ryan posting unread dating app matches like a scoreboard. At 6:11 p.m., he posted black text on a white screen. "Know your worth. Never beg anyone to stay." Adrian actually laughed at that, but there was no joy in it. "The man spent 3 years needing applause for breathing," she said. "He wouldn't know dignity if it sent him a calendar invite." I almost smiled. Almost. Around 7, Jerome texted to check on me. Then my cousin Mia. Then my mother. Apparently Ryan had told people we were taking space after a toxic misunderstanding. I called my mother because I knew if I didn't, she would worry herself sick. When I told her enough of the truth, she was quiet for a moment and then said very evenly, "Come get your things out of that apartment as soon as you can." The practicality of it nearly made me cry. "And Mom?" "Yes? I feel stupid." "No," she said, cutting straight through me. "You feel wounded. Those are not the same thing." After I hung up, Adrian handed me my phone. "You missed one." It was a text from Ryan. "How's your little protest going? You done making this dramatic yet?" Then another. "Also, just so you know, I'm already over this. You really overestimated your place in my life." And 14 minutes later, "Can you send me the login for the streaming account?" I stared at the screen. Something in me finally cooled all the way over. Not into indifference, into clarity. At 7:23 p.m., exactly 24 hours after he had thrown down his challenge, Adrienne looked up from her phone and said, "There it is." "What?" "He just deleted half his stories." We checked. She was right. The rooftop bar post was gone. The gym shot was gone. The champagne glasses were gone. In their place, a single black screen with one sentence. Funny how quickly people show who they really are. At 7:24 p.m., Adrienne's phone rang. "Ryan." She looked at me. "Do you want me to answer?" I thought about his voice in the kitchen, the messages, the smugness that had carried him right up until the moment reality pushed back. "Yes," I said. She put him on speaker. Ryan didn't bother with hello. "So this is what we're doing now? You're hiding her with you?" Adrienne's face didn't change. "She's not being hidden. She's choosing not to talk to you." "That's not your decision." "No," Adrienne said evenly. "It's hers. That's why it bothers you." He laughed, but it was thinner than the night before. "You always wanted this, didn't you?" Adrienne didn't bite. "What I wanted was for you to stop treating people like they only matter when they reflect well on you." He ignored that. "Put Naomi on." I took the phone. "I'm here." The pause on his end was immediate. Then his tone changed. Softer. Controlled. The version of himself he used when he needed witnesses to think he was reasonable. "Baby, come on, this isn't what I meant." I looked out at the city lights and said nothing. You know I say stupid things when I'm mad. Still nothing. "Are you really going to throw away 3 years over one sentence?" Finally I answered. "No, Ryan, I'm throwing it away over what the sentence revealed." He inhaled sharply. "You're being influenced." That almost made me laugh. You posted all day trying to prove you were over me, I said. You told me I was replaceable, so why are you calling? There it was again, that pause where the truth showed up before the performance caught it. I just don't like games, he said. You set the game, I told him. You just didn't like losing. His voice hardened. So that's it? You're done? Yes, I said. He went quiet. Then, you'll regret letting people get between us. No, I replied. I'll regret not leaving sooner. Then I ended the call. My hand was shaking after. Not because I wanted him back. Because endings are still endings, even when they save you. Adrienne gently took the phone from me and set it face down on the table. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, You know he's going to escalate. How bad? She gave me a tired look. He's embarrassed. And men like Ryan don't experience embarrassment privately. She was right. It started an hour later. A post implying Adrienne had manipulated me. A story about fake friends and jealous women. A vague caption about people waiting for their chance and destroying relationships from the inside. Then came the messages from mutuals. Hey, just checking in. Heard some weird stuff. I'm sure there are two sides. He seems really hurt. That last one nearly made me throw my phone across the room. As if pain were proof of innocence. As if being loud about suffering mattered more than causing it. Adrienne ordered takeout. Neither of us touched much. I sat on her couch with a blanket over my knees, staring at the dark screen of the television while my thoughts moved in circles. You don't have to be okay tonight, she said after a while. I know. You don't have to be elegant about it either. That pulled a real laugh out of me. Small, but real. I don't think I have dramatic breakdown energy, I admitted. I think I just have bone-deep humiliation. Adrienne set her chopsticks down. For what it's worth, the humiliating part is what he did. Not that you loved him. I looked at her. She held my gaze with that same careful steadiness. No pity. No performance. Just truth. Close to midnight, my phone lit up again from an unknown number. I didn't mean replace you like that. I meant relationship-wise. You know that. Stop being cruel. A second message followed. Also, if Adrienne thinks this means she won, she didn't. And then the third, call me before you make this worse. I blocked that number too. 24 hours earlier, Ryan had looked at me like I was interchangeable. 24 hours later, he was spiraling because I had chosen not to audition for my own place in his life. He had not expected me to leave. He had expected me to compete. The next morning, my phone felt heavier than it should have. Ryan had posted a series of stories overnight. Some people don't leave because they're strong. They leave because they've been influenced. Real ones know the truth. Be careful who you let into your relationship. Not everyone claps for you. Some people wait for you to fall. Then a cropped screenshot of one of my old messages, reframed like evidence of instability. This is what I've been dealing with privately. I handed Adrienne's phone back slowly. There it was. The rewrite. He's building a narrative, I said. Adrienne nodded. He always does. Truth is too small for him. He needs a storyline. Then she told me he had called one of my old coworkers and implied I was unstable, that he had tried to help and I had pushed him away. I closed my eyes. He's not trying to get me back, I said. No. He's trying to win. That was the word. Heavy. Accurate. My phone buzzed again. This time it was his mother. I answered. Naomi, sweetheart, what is going on? I think you know. Well, Ryan is very upset. There it was. Not what happened. Not what he said. Just how he felt about the consequences. He should be, I replied calmly. A pause. Then the slight shift in tone. Men say things when they're emotional. You know how sensitive he can be. Sensitive. I almost laughed. He told me I was replaceable. He didn't mean it like that. How did he mean it? Another pause. He meant that relationships take work and sometimes people feel unappreciated. No, I cut in, my voice still quiet but no longer soft. He meant exactly what he said. She sighed. I just don't want you to throw away something good over pride. I'm not leaving because of pride, I said. I'm leaving because of clarity. That seemed to irritate her. Well, you won't find another man like him. I stared out at the skyline through Adrienne's window. That's the point. The silence on the other end sharpened. You're making a mistake. No, I replied. I already made it. I stayed too long. Then I hung up. A few minutes later, Adrienne's building phone rang. Security. There was someone in the lobby asking to come up. Ryan. Adrienne told them not to let him up. He was being a bit loud. Of course he was. We went down to a viewing floor where the security cameras could be accessed. There he was, in the middle of the pristine lobby, shirt wrinkled, movements too sharp, too big, talking to the security guard like volume could replace authority. He's holding something, I said. Adrienne zoomed in. A box, shoebox-sized. As if on cue, Ryan lifted it higher, like he was presenting evidence. Then we saw his mouth form the words. She has my stuff. Adrienne scoffed softly. He's inventing property now? The guard shook his head. Ryan stepped closer, louder, more animated. Then he pulled out his phone. No, Adrienne said under her breath. He wouldn't. But he did. He went live. On camera, his expression changed instantly. From anger, to wounded, to controlled, to victim. Adrienne pulled up the stream on her phone. He's saying you're refusing to return his belongings. What belongings? She scrolled. Things that are important to him, that you won't let him up, that you're being manipulated. Of course. I leaned closer to the screen. Ryan's face filled it. Earnest, hurt, completely false. I'm just trying to get my things, Adrienne read flatly. I don't understand why she's doing this. Something in me went still again. He's not trying to get anything back, I said quietly. He's trying to make me look like the villain. Then the police arrived. Ryan turned toward them, still filming, still trying to control the climax of the scene. But the moment slipped out of his hands anyway. People in the comments started asking what belongings he meant. Adrienne squinted at the screen, then let out a disbelieving breath. He says emotional items. I almost laughed. Emotional items? Yeah, he just said you're holding 3 years of his life hostage. That did it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd, because it was over. The officers gestured toward the door. Ryan resisted, argued, then finally stepped back, still talking, still filming, still trying to salvage control from something that had already broken. As they escorted him out, I felt something inside me settle completely. Not relief, not victory, something quieter, final. He really thought I'd come down, I said. Adrienne looked at me. He thought you'd react. I nodded. He thought I'd fight him. The silence after the lobby incident felt different, not empty, clean. For the first time since I walked out, I woke up without immediately reaching for my phone. A few days passed like that, quietly. No dramatic breakdowns, no big confrontations, just space. I stayed at Adrienne's place longer than I expected. At first out of necessity, then because it felt safe. And that was all it was. Safe. Steady. She was never a romantic complication. She was a witness, a decent person, and a friend who had helped pull me out of a lie before I lost even more of myself inside it. We fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee, work calls, silences that didn't feel awkward, evenings where we sat on the couch without needing to fill the room. There was no confusion in it, just relief. On the 4th day, Adrienne looked up from her phone and said, "You're going to run into him eventually." I know. He won't let this end quietly. I know that too. Later that afternoon, I went back to the apartment. Adrienne came with me because she knew walking back into a place like that can shake something loose even after you think you're steady again. Ryan wasn't there, but his presence lingered anyway. In the half-empty closet, in the faint smell of cologne, in the silence that felt different now, not shared, just vacant. I gathered the last of my things, took what was mine, left what wasn't. At one point, I paused in the living room. 3 years, reduced to a few items that actually mattered. Everything else suddenly felt replaceable. The irony didn't escape me. We were almost done when the door opened. Ryan, of course. He froze when he saw us. For a split second, his face was completely unguarded. Shock. Then something sharper. Then control. Wow, he said slowly, stepping inside. Didn't expect this. Adrienne didn't move. Neither did I. Ryan's eyes flicked between us, taking inventory. You couldn't even wait a week, he added. I leaned against the counter. We're not doing that. Doing what? Rewriting this. His jaw tightened. I'm not rewriting anything. I walked into my apartment and found my ex and my best friend playing house. Adrienne spoke before I could. She's packing her things. Ryan ignored her completely. Of course he did. His focus stayed on me. So this is what you needed? He said. Someone new to feel important again? There it was. The bait. I didn't take it. I don't need anything from you anymore, I said calmly. That landed. Not loudly, but deeply. His expression shifted, then hardened. You're making a mistake. I almost smiled. No, I made the mistake when I stayed. He took a step closer and lowered his voice. You think this ends well for you? I held his gaze. It already has. That was when the crack showed. Small, real. For the first time since I had known him, Ryan didn't have a response ready. Because this wasn't a fight. And without a fight, he had nothing to win. He scoffed instead, turned away, grabbed something off the table just to create movement. Take whatever you want, he muttered. Doesn't matter. I picked up my bag. I know. We walked past him toward the door. He didn't stop us, didn't yell, didn't escalate. And somehow that was worse for him, because it meant I was no longer part of the story he wanted to tell about himself. A few weeks later, life stopped feeling like a reaction and started feeling like something I was actually choosing again. I stopped checking Ryan's page, stopped rereading messages, stopped wondering what he was telling people. because eventually I realized something simple. Whatever version of the story he was telling did not change what had happened. And more importantly, it did not change what I knew. Adrienne noticed it before I said anything. You haven't asked about him in days. There's nothing left to ask. She studied me for a second. Most people don't get there this fast. I think I was already halfway there, I said. I just didn't want to admit it. That was the truth. The relationship had not ended in one night. It had ended slowly, in all the moments I ignored. Julian entered my life quietly. Not like a replacement, not like a rescue, just present. Adrienne introduced us through work one afternoon when I stopped by her studio to drop something off. He was leaning over a table of prints, sleeves rolled up, completely focused on a layout. This is Julian, Adrienne said. He's helping me on the campaign shoot I told you about. He looked up and smiled. Not the kind of smile that evaluates you. Not the kind that performs. Just warm. Hey, he said. I've heard about you. I raised an eyebrow. Hopefully not everything. He chuckled softly. Only the important parts. There was no pressure, no instant movie scene spark, just ease. We started seeing each other in small ways. Coffee. Walks. Long conversations that didn't feel like interviews. Julian listened. Actually listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak. Not turning everything back toward himself. Just present. It took me a while to trust that. Not him. The feeling. Because when you've spent years around conditional attention, calm can feel suspicious at first. One night, while we were walking back from dinner, he said something that stayed with me. You don't have to explain yourself so much. I glanced at him. I'm not. You are, he said gently. Not in a bad way. Just like you're used to needing permission to be understood. That hit deeper than I expected. Because he was right. I had been explaining myself for years, softening reactions, making everything easier to digest so it wouldn't be rejected. Julian didn't ask me to do that. And slowly I stopped. Meanwhile, Ryan did what he always did when the truth stopped flattering him. He escalated. Posts, then longer posts, then videos, then a full rebrand of himself as the victim. Adrienne showed me one once. I've been quiet because I didn't want to speak on something personal, Ryan said to the camera, expression carefully arranged. Adrienne muted it after a few seconds. That's enough. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, because I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew the script. It only worked for so long. People started noticing the inconsistencies, the exaggerations, the way every story somehow positioned him as both flawless and deeply wronged. It didn't collapse all at once. It cracked, little by little. Then, one afternoon, Adrienne walked in, holding her phone like she couldn't decide whether to laugh or sigh. You need to see this. It was a presentation, a literal presentation, 42 slides, titled, The Truth About Betrayal. We scrolled. Screenshots from years ago. Random messages out of context. A timeline that contradicted itself. A section called, Why I Was Actually the Victim. Bullet points. So many bullet points. I stared at it. Not shocked. Not angry. Just done. He really thinks this helps him, I said quietly. Adrienne nodded. He needs it to. A few weeks later, Julian and I were at a small market, walking side by side, talking about nothing important. And that felt important. At one point, he reached for my hand. Not dramatically, not hesitantly, just naturally. I looked down at our hands, then up at him. He didn't say anything. Didn't overthink it. And for the first time, neither did I. Across the street, I caught a glimpse of someone familiar. One of Ryan's friends. Watching. Phone already in hand. Of course, the information would travel. Another version would be built. But this time I didn't care. Because whatever story Ryan needed to tell, it no longer included me in any way that mattered. 2 years is a strange amount of time. Long enough for everything to change. Short enough that some people don't change at all. By the time 24 months passed, I didn't think about Ryan every day anymore. Not even every week. Sometimes not at all. Life had settled. Not into something boring. Into something real. Julian and I moved in together about 6 months after everything ended. Not rushed, not dramatic. Just the natural next step of two people who actually liked being in the same space without needing to prove anything. We built small things. A routine. A kitchen that felt like ours. A balcony filled with herbs that somehow didn't die under our care. Normal. Quiet. Good. And that word meant more to me now than anything extraordinary ever had. Because good didn't require performance. Adrienne stayed close too. Not as a bridge to the past. As part of my present. A solid friend. A witness to the worst chapter and one of the people who helped me survive it cleanly. We didn't talk about Ryan much anymore. There was nothing left to analyze. Until the message came. Unknown number. Of course. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity is a quiet habit that never fully leaves. I know you'll read this. Then, I'm getting married next month. Then, he's a surgeon. Tesla. House in the hills. I finally found someone on my level. I stared at the screen. There it was. The final version of the story. The one where he wins. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But I did look into it once. The surgeon was a first-year medical resident. The Tesla was an older model. The house in the hills belonged to his parents. None of that mattered, because the pattern hadn't changed, just the props. That night, Julian was cooking when I walked into the kitchen. "Hey," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "You okay?" I leaned against the counter. "Yeah." He studied me for a second. "You sure?" I smiled faintly. I just got a message from my past trying to impress me. He laughed softly. "That sounds exhausting." "It used to be. Now it wasn't." 2 weeks later, Julian proposed. Not in front of a crowd. Not with spectacle. Just at the same small market where we had first held hands. He pulled a simple ring from his pocket, looked at me, and said, "I don't want to build something perfect. I just want to build something real with you. No pressure. No performance. No expectation beyond honesty." "Yes," I said. And that was it. No posts. No announcements. Just truth. A few days later, Ryan's mother called. "Naomi," she said, her tone strangely measured. "I heard you're engaged." "I am." A pause. "Well, congratulations." "Thank you." Another pause. Then she added, almost casually, "Ryan is getting married too. We were thinking perhaps a double wedding could—" I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just happened. "I'm sorry," I said, still smiling slightly. "No." Her tone tightened. "People make mistakes, Naomi. Forgiveness." "This isn't about forgiveness," I said gently. "It's about reality." Silence. Then, "You'll understand one day." I looked out at the balcony, at the herbs growing steadily in the sunlight. "I already do." And I ended the call. A week later, everything fell apart. Not for me. For him. Adrienne called me that afternoon. "You're not going to believe this." I leaned back on the couch. "Try me." "The wedding's off." I wasn't surprised. Just curious. Why? Because he lied. Of course he did. Apparently, Ryan had told his fiancée that I had stolen an heirloom ring from him, that I had taken something valuable, that I had wronged him in ways he had never spoken about publicly. The story worked until someone checked, until the truth caught up. And when it didn't just crack. It collapsed. Completely. The engagement ended. The post disappeared. The narrative finally ran out of room. A few days later, another message came. Different number. Same energy. "You ruined everything." I looked at it, then locked my phone. Because no, I hadn't. I had just left. And everything that followed was his. Spring came quietly that year. Julian and I started planning the wedding. Small. Simple. People who mattered. No spectacle. No performance. One evening, while watering the herbs on the balcony, I found myself thinking about that night again. The kitchen. The words. The way Ryan had looked at me like I was something that could be replaced on a schedule. 24 hours. I almost smiled. Because he had been wrong. Not about me being replaceable, everyone is, in some way, but about something more important. He thought people were roles, positions, empty spaces waiting to be filled, but they're not. They're choices. And once someone chooses to walk away, you don't get to replace them. You just learn to live without them. Or you don't. I set the watering can down, stepped back, looked at everything we had built. Not perfect, not curated, not designed for anyone else to see. Just real. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably still telling his story, still explaining, still trying to prove something. But I wasn't part of it anymore. Not as a character. Not as a loss. Not as a lesson. Just a past he couldn't rewrite. And me? I had stopped being something that needed to be replaced a long time ago.